Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Mayor Pete. Well, he's not mayor, he's the Secretary of Transportation now, but he said something crazy on The View about he was asked, do you believe the Florida bill will kill kids? And he said yes, which it's just more hysteria that they're really doubling down. The White House is really, really, really doubling down on gender affirming care, which according to the White House, that would be puberty blockers. That would be not just changing your pronouns in respect to people's pronouns, but puberty blockers, hormones, and even surgery. So, this is a really extreme position, and this is a really extreme White House compared to what people thought they were getting when they would vote for Biden. I mean, I knew what would be on the rise. And I guess I didn't expect it to be quite this bad, everything going on. But if you thought Biden was going to be just this, I don't know, nice old moderate sort of guy, you're totally wrong. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about Trump announced an endorsement of Dr. Oz, who's had the TV show Dr. Oz for a long time, and the liberals were on The View and stuff were really angry when he came out as a Republican and was running, and they're like, he went over to the dark side. I think that's what Joy Behar said. But there's been plenty of people sounding the alarm. Jack Posobiec on Twitter has been, he's from Pennsylvania, has been going on and on and on about it for a while, and they're not happy about it. People are not happy about this at all in the least bit. So people are really questioning Trump's endorsement on this. So it was interesting to kind of go through the comments. I was on Twitter and reading different articles about people's opinions on it, and they're like, they think he missed the mark on this. So gonna Trump said he's pro-gun and pro-life, and he's to a degree, but I think it's really more he's what you call, I guess, personally pro-life. At least this is from comments that he's made on the radio, and he was pressed when he first started running on Fox News and didn't quite get the answer that a lot of conservatives were hoping for. So he doesn't want anyone he knows to personally do it, but doesn't necessarily want it banned. So that's what most people call pro-choice, actually. So we're going to talk about that today. But before we jump into the news of the day, I want to encourage you guys to go blacktenews.com, check out different content that I have on the website, different articles that I have on the website. Please make sure that you check out different merchandise. I guess I got the black tea mug with me today. I got the Constitution is a Glorious Liberty document. We got the My Money, My Business shirt, all kinds of goodies you guys can check out at the website. Today is actually my dad's birthday. He's 65 today. So wish him a happy birthday. I've a lot of the good values and morals and stuff, obviously, I get from my parents. My dad is super, super conservative. He wasn't always a Republican. My oldest sister, she had a government teacher in a very urban school in Pontiac, and they were doing like a test, and they were just saying this is what conservatives believe, Democrats believe, Republicans, liberals, etc. So she took the test and most people in a class full of black kids found out that they were actually conservative. So she went home and said, Dad, I'm a conservative. He said, what? And she's like, you are too. So he hadn't been happy with the Democrats anyway. So it wasn't like a severe sort of divorce or anything. So I just kind of remember, because she graduated in 2000. So I just remember my dad always listening to Rush Limbaugh and other stuff like that. So as far back as I can really recall, he's been very knowledgeable, very much into politics. But besides like the politics, he's my brother is currently the pastor of my church right now. But my dad started the church with my grandmother, and he always believed in instilling good values. Like someone on Twitter, I got into it back and forth a little bit because people try to say that Christianity is so bad. I'm just like, they teach you men to love their wives like Christ loved the church, who, by the way, died for the church. So FYI, women to reverence their husbands. Nothing's wrong with that. And if you read Proverbs 31, there's lots of great stuff that the Bible encourages women to do, including being not just faithful, being good wives, and being good mothers, but also entrepreneurs. So there's lots of good stuff in there for women. It teaches the kids to honor their mother, their father, but also says, hey, don't provoke your children to wrath. So a lot of the good family sort of unit things that we live by are in the word, and we attribute a lot of our family cohesiveness to biblical principles. And it wasn't just a matter of dropping your kids off in Sunday school and I don't know, going home and living whatever life, and you hoping they turn out okay and you live whatever life you want to. No, they are really, really good examples. So I'm very grateful to my mom and my dad. But it is his birthday, so wish him a happy birthday. He's a good dad. And on top of all that, we were really into comic books and stuff, and he just always wanted to instill, he liked us reading comic books because a lot of the characters just did what was right for right's sake. Now, I don't really care for comic books much anymore because they've gone off the deep end, but we're just a very close, tight-knit family, and a lot of that's really driven by my parents, but I would say particularly dad. So love him to pieces. As a matter of fact, if any of you have looked at my book Super Kid, he's actually the inspiration behind Super Kid. Super Kid is about a boy with an overactive imagination. He believes he has superpowers. He doesn't really. So the main character, Felix, he's Super Kid. And the other two characters behind him are Princess Lady Diva and Stickman. So really quickly, I'm just going to go through this before we get to the news. So my dad was praying to God that he become Superboy. And since he was stronger than all the kids, he actually thought that God was answering his prayer. So he did try to demonstrate his power one day and got pretty embarrassed. So that's one story that made it into the book. There's another story, like the other main characters, Stickman. So my dad, when he was a kid for Halloween, he actually did have this stick, and he was, just kind of dressed up in black clothes, and he called himself Stickman. So he was going around practicing all, week long with a stick. And by the time like Halloween, came up, it wasn't really much of a stick. It was more like a baton. But there were some bullies that were trying to steal, kids' candies and stuff. And so he ended up, bullies ended up, I think, taking his sister's candy. But when they tried to get to him, he fought them off with his stick. He remembered he had that stick in his hand. So they had like a thick winter coat on. So he was just like hitting them with the stick until they let go. And so when they came home, told his dad about what happened, and they're like, well, Gino, why didn't they take your candy? And he's like, you know what, Dad? This year, I was Stickman. So his dad, just his chest just got like real big, and he got really excited and had such pride in him. And he's like, I'm gonna get you a strap for that stick. So that's kind of one of the climax sort of stories that are in the book. So anyway, if you're interested in Super Kid, you can, if you go to blacktnews.com and hit the merchandise banner, it'll take you to my book website. But all my books are available on Amazon and paperback, on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. So it's got a lot of great values for your kids, but they're good chapter books. I've been told on good authority that they're epic. So check out that stuff, based on true stories. Anyway, let's get on to the stories, the news of the day. First and foremost, Whitmer, I think I maybe briefly mentioned this last week, but the kidnapping story, about which this played like a huge role, I think, in the talking point as far as the election went in 2020, because Whitmer was a tyrannical governor. There's no way about it. Like, that's just how it was. She had all these edicts, and many of them, I think a lot of people liked didn't like to, but played along for a little bit until they just got more and more and more and more ridiculous. Like you can go in the water, but not if you have a motor on your boat. You can go canoeing. It's like you can go to the store, but you can't buy seeds if you're in the store. That would be crazy. Or paint thinner or other kind of stuff. Everybody hated the "you're essential, but you're not essential" kind of thing. But she was just crazy, and so it wouldn't let you travel between your own houses. We wanted to limit the amount of people you could have in your own house. So she a lot of governors went really too far. She really went too far. And she encouraged people to like confront each other over masks. I'm like, social distance? Like people are crazy right now. Do not like encourage division and confrontation. That's crazy. And so when the Supreme Court ruled that she had gone too far with the powers she was exercising, she just started using like the licensing agencies and health department, whatever. So if businesses didn't enforce her edicts, they would just like lose their ability to have a business. So since she no longer could have the power, she made the businesses turn against their customers. So she was just awful. So there's all this anger and animosity and stuff that people had, and she really used this story, I think, to tamper down on a lot of the heat of the criticisms that she had, even though much of it is warranted. And I like it's just the truth. And so when this story came out, I remember that there was a plot to kidnap her. There were Republican legislators who were upset, like, you just kept this secret, like around you working. There's people who don't like us, and it's like, could we have been in danger? And you just kept it to yourself and announced it, like, okay. So there were some Republicans who were upset about it. But it turns out that they had a trial last week. The trial been going on for a while, but I think the deliberation lasted maybe 5 days, I guess. And two people were found not guilty, and two people they couldn't come to a conclusion. There's other people who have to be on trial, but I think that was a federal case. So, but the interesting thing about the story though is that the FBI, I guess the jury found that the FBI like entrapped the people. That was the defense, that the FBI entrapped them. And so it seems like there would have been no plot if the FBI was not involved at all. So really dirty. But I remember Whitmer blamed Trump because he tweeted out "Liberate Michigan." Now he tweeted out "Liberate other states" as well. That were just going so strict with the lockdowns. Now, I thought that was weird for when Trump did that, because he was also kind of inconsistent with other states that are opening. He was like, "You're opening too fast," but then he'd be like, "Liberate Michigan." I'm like, you got to pick a lane, bruh. But Whitmer really tried to use that to continue bashing Trump, and then it was like these ladies against Trump, and they just use it all for a lot of political gain. And I'm not saying she didn't have reason to be worried. I'd be worried if the FBI was plotting a plot to kidnap me too, but but it was, and I'm not saying she was in on or anything like that, but the FBI, why would the FBI do this? Why? And ask yourself, how often do they do things like this? And how much is it involved in other sort of big political hoopla? But anyway, so Right to Bear Memes had this meme, and they replaced Whitmer's face there with the person who created this whole illusion. But again, I'm not saying, I just thought it was a funny meme. So that's my meme of the day. And I'm not saying she, of course, had any part to play in the setup of it or anything like that. Not what I'm saying at all. But the jury did come to the conclusion that at least some of them were entrapped by our law enforcement. So that's a wild story. I do have a friend who I met. He was the Oakland County youth chair, and I was like the co youth chair, I guess, at the time when we met each other. But he's a libertarian Republican, lawyer, and so he's actually working on defending one of the people in the case. So I'm sure this is good news for him, and moving forward and stuff. But I was following his feed for the last couple days. So very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. Um, Elon Musk. So last week we mentioned that Elon bought a majority share, not the majority shares, but he's the highest stakeholder in Twitter. So people were very alarmed at Twitter because they're little fascists and tyrants, of course, and they don't like free speech, and Elon Musk apparently does. As a matter of fact, the Babylon Bee, who's been shut out of their Twitter because they made a joke, their satire site, but they did mention, that I think it was either a tweet or something about Rachel Levin or Leah Thomas, but I think it was maybe Rachel Levin, and pointing out that they're a man. And so Twitter did not like that. So Twitter locked them out. And I think Tucker Carlson replied to that or mentioned that. And Tucker Carlson is, to my knowledge, still locked out of Twitter too. Because there was a big quote from Tucker going around that just wasn't true, that Adam Kinzinger and other people shared around, and Tucker was like, I can't retweet or say anything on Twitter because I'm still locked out. But he addressed it in his show one night. But anyway, they're like, we're not taking our tweet down because Twitter does this whole humiliation thing where they're like, you have to take down your tweet and then we can reinstate you. And they're like, we're not erasing this because it's just admitting, not admitting that it's not true, but we're not just going to cave and delete something that's true because you guys don't like it and you call it hate speech. So they're still locked out. So they just have like private accounts that'll tweet out stuff, like some of their articles and whatnot. So go actually follow or bookmark the Babylon Bees site if that's what you like to follow. But they can't tweet out, but you can at least follow some of the founders. But the founder of Babylon Bee said that he actually talked to Elon Musk about that incident and did confirm that they were indeed locked out before Elon bought all that stock. So I thought that was interesting. And of course, he also had a poll asking people like, do you believe that Twitter adheres to free speech? And of course, most people, it was a huge poll. It said no, that absolutely not. And I did vote in that poll because Twitter does not adhere to the principles of free speech. They obviously, I think a lot of their stuff that they do is one-sided, and they really put their fingers on the trigger with really big things like the Hunter Biden laptop story during the election. Really, really worked to suppress the oldest newspaper in the country, which you can think is right wing or whatever, which the New York Post does lean that way, but they are still the oldest paper, I think, in the or major paper, at least in the country or whatever. So Elon Musk went ahead and bought 9 shares of Twitter and became the biggest shareholder. So they did ask Elon Musk to have a seat. And so Elon actually decided not to, which I thought was pretty interesting. This is from TikTok. I mean, sorry, not TikTok, Twitter. Team, Elon Musk has decided not to join our board. Here's what I can share about what happened. The board and I had many discussions about Elon joining the board and with Elon directly. We are excited to collaborate and clear about the risk. We also believe that having Elon as a fiduciary of the company, where he, like all Tord members, has to act in the best interest of the company, of our shareholders, and was the best path forward. The board offered him a seat. We announced on Tuesday that Elon would be appointed to the board contingent on a background check and formal acceptance. Elon's appointment to the board was to become official effective 4/9. But Elon shared that same morning that he would no longer be joining the board. I believe this is for the best. We have and will always value input from our shareholders, whether they are on the board or not. Elon is our biggest shareholder, and we will remain open to his input. There will be distractions ahead, whatever that means. But our goal priorities remain unchanged. The decisions we make and how we execute is in our hands, no one else's. Let's tune out the noise and stay focused on the work and what we're building. So there's a lot of people who do not want Elon to come in and be all pro free speech. And like, it was funny because Washington Post ran a headline about the dangers of someone so rich coming over and having a say in I guess the world of politics. And it's like, dude, Jeff Bezos, owner of Amazon, owns the Washington Post. Like, democracy dies in darkness, dude. Like, come on. So they just don't like that one of their guys, one of their like elitist folk who have all this access and capital, isn't one of them, I guess, as far as what they want to push. And Elon is just like, hey, let's do things that make sense. And free speech is something that should be more on the absolute side and not just we're shills for the Democrats. So Twitter doesn't like that, and that's the problem. But there were some people who were concerned when they read that statement. However, one seat on a board with several other people, because they only offered him one seat, even though he has like the most stakes. They offered him one seat. So that's not a lot of power on a board. They also probably would have had him sign like non-disclosure forms, and he probably can't be tweeting out like a wild man like he will be, fly by the seat of his pants, whatever the saying is, that he kind of does now. So he'd be limited on his speech, probably of stuff that he could say, and not be able to openly advocate for kind of the stuff that he wants just on social media like he can now. So that would also be a problem. But the biggest problem is that they wanted to cap him at only being able to buy 15% of Twitter. So there's speculation, and who knows what Elon will do. Maybe he just was like having fun and wanted to scare some people one weekend, and he's got money to blow, so he bought the majority, the most shares of Twitter. It's not a majority, but he's has the most out of everybody, including more than Jack Dorsey. I think Jack Dorsey has like 2.2 or something shares. So since he doesn't have this limitation of 15%, and that maybe that's why they tried to offer him the board seat, so he wouldn't try to do some kind of hostile takeover, and they wanted to muzzle him and whatnot, with just that one seat and not being able to say as much, etc. He can go buy more shares of Twitter and fire the board if he wants to do that. He has the money to make that possible. Now, is that something is in the long run that he really wants to pursue and do? I don't know. I think, but there's a lot of hopeful people there that do really still like the platform of Twitter, or like the idea of Twitter, but they don't obviously like how they limit people's speech the way that they do, and obviously they tend to do it one side. I mean, what they did with Babylon Bee was, of course, silly. And then Tucker was silly. A couple of, maybe about a month or two ago, I don't know if it was 2 months now, but we mentioned on the show when Defiant L got temporarily banned or temporarily suspended. And that account, they just take an old tweet or something and then like a new one, and then just make you look silly with your own words. They don't even like add any sort of commentary on it. It's just your view, but your new view dunking on your old view. And of course they get Democrats involved in that all the time. And it's a funny account, and I share stuff, but those original tweets are gone from those people. So why are you coming after them, Defiant L, for just pointing out the sort of irony in these people kind of defeating themselves? So he did get his account back there, but there was a lot of talk about when it happened because it was so outrageous. Jack Posobiec, who I mentioned a little bit earlier in my intro, he got locked out yesterday, I think it was, for mentioning that Disney's groomers and calling them groomers and stuff. So he was suspended for a little while, which did not help to squash the hashtag because people certainly tweeted it in his stead. So good job there with your suppression. Obviously did not work. So I think it would be hilarious if Elon decided to take over Twitter. In the end, I guess he's gonna do whatever is best for him. It's interesting that he did tweet out a question. He's like, should we take the HQ of Twitter and turn it into a homeless shelter because no one's there anyway? And people voted yes. He tweeted out like, should we have an edit button, which people have been asking about for years. And he's tweeted out some other things that have been pretty interesting. So we'll see. He tweeted out that the top 10 like main accounts aren't really even active on Twitter, like Taylor Swift's like has is in the top 10 but hasn't even really tweeted, in a while, which then people started the Taylor Swift jokes like it's her silence is deafening, which is what they would say about Taylor before she got political. They're like, her silence is deafening. So those jokes are always funny, but a lot of the users who have all these millions of followers, some of them haven't even tweeted things this year. So he just asked the question, is this platform dying? And so a lot of people got what they wanted out of them at the beginning, but a lot of these accounts aren't engaged with them so much. And a lot of, I think TikTok is kind of where it's obviously at, but they're still, good in these other platforms. And I'm on them all, but I think Elon could shake things up, and it would be hilarious. I gotta say, I think I besides wanting free speech to reign and these people to lose, part of it is just, man, it would be hilarious. So I'm team Elon. I'm team Elon, but we'll see what happens. Before I move on to this Biden story, or I just want to really quickly point to this poll that I thought was interesting, comparing old Pew Research polls to an NBC poll. You see a really big shift that is probably going to just devastate the Democrats come November. Now there are like some areas in the country, like in New York, but I think they got shut down for a little bit, of where they are like aggressively trying to redistrict. We've had a lot of fights in Michigan as far as our redistricting. I don't think there's much that we can do. But just because there's aggressive redistricting with these sort of numbers, it doesn't mean that hope is lost in some of those even aggressive plus areas. So you see, college educated men have had a big shift, and men with no degree. There's there's a big shift there. There's just a big shift all around, except the women. You know, I don't know what's up with women, but they've shifted too. What's with these college educated women? What did they do? What did they do? in these colleges. I mean, I know kind of what they do. They do indoctrinate like crazy, but um someone said the midterms are going to be crazy. I think they will be. My only concern is that I hope that the Republicans prove to be worthy of this sort of control. Now, I think that they should continue just kind of karate chopping Biden in whatever way possible with policies. Um, I just hope, that they stay strong and don't let Biden push in some dumb stuff. Like, Biden mentioned that he really wanted an Equality Act passed. He mentioned that during his State of the Union. I think he mentioned that again when he on Trans Visibility Day. Of course, there's a lot of issues with the um, Equality Act. It's not equal to women. It's um, in the long run, it's going to invade on a lot of women's spaces, and it's also brings up a lot of questions as far as religious liberty and so on. Which, when you mention religious liberty, a lot of these Democrats are like, "Oh, you just want to bringing that up because you're bigots and you want to promote your bigotry." It's like, you that you guys aren't that special. Like, you don't have the right to just trample on other people's rights because you think you are. You're just not, and we're not all going to agree. And the least you can do is just try to find some equal footing and just accept the fact that not everyone is just going to bow down to what you want. Like, one of the reasons why I have this "you are not that special" and put that on a cup. Um, so you don't. People say love is love and whatnot. It's like, okay, but people still have the right to not like you still. So um, you just and people, you can't police people's speech. You can try, but you can't compel people to do your pronouns and other stuff like that. And you just have to get over that. You just have to get over that. And if you're like, well, we can't get over that because you're literally killing kids, um, that's hysterical, and you need some help. The whole world cannot conform to your fragile ego. I'm sorry. I don't have a nicer way to put that right now. It's just I know that sounds kind of sharp today, but it is what it is. So they're really doubling down. Biden, his administration. So Biden said on Trans Visibility Day that that the way that parents with trans kids they show love and affirm love is by gender affirming. And the White House did also put out this graphic describing what some of that stuff was: gender affirming care, and some of that is hairstyle, some of it is just changing the name, gender pronouns. But then it goes into like restrooms and other facilities, letting them go wherever they want. So there we are, right there with an invasion on some of women's spaces. And I'm sorry if people feel uncomfortable, but do you know how it's just uncomfortable being anyone sometimes? Young women, like I wasn't comfortable being in the locker room changing with other young women, like uncomfortable with my body and stuff. So I can kind of sympathize, I guess, in a way, but it doesn't explain why you feel like you should be able to overthrow, expel the women. Did you guys hear the story about one of the swimmers who tied with Leah Thomas, and maybe it was for fourth place or something, or fifth place in a competition, and they were like, Leah has to hold the statue, and they had her. I think maybe can't remember. It was fourth and fifth. They had them hold, or fifth and sixth, but they're like, well, we'll mail you your tied place statue in the mail or whatever, but Leah needs to hold it, and she's just like, why can't I hold it? And they're like, it just needs to be Leah. So, why? Why can't the woman who won? They tied. Why does she have to hold a statue? Why can't even they both hold the same one at the same time or something? At least that. Why does Leah get to hold the statue and not hers? Why would you treat a woman like that? An athlete who gave her all over someone with a huge physical advantage. So we're it's not even about like equality. It's especially in a case like that where they're like showing their true colors, like this is what we want to promote over you. Like this is our priority here. So this should be like red flags, alarms, bells going off on people's heads, right? But even gets worse. They have puberty blockers on here, which Rand Paul tried to ask Rachel Levin when he's being confirmed to the for the role of assistant health secretary, and Levin didn't want to answer the question. It was like, well, it's very nuanced field, and if I'm appointed, I look forward to talking to you and your staff about it. It's like, why don't you answer the question? Because once you're appointed, there's no leverage. You don't have to. I don't think you really have to comply so much. Or you'll find a way maybe not to, and probably still not answer the question. Well, actually, I think this is answering the question. Obviously, they are for puberty blockers, which this stuff can sterilize kids, and this is what the White House is pushing. Hormone therapy, which would be like testosterone for females and estrogen for males. Top surgery and bottom surgery. So that's what's being pushed in our White House. So that's what Biden is saying. This is how you show love to your trans kids. Puberty blockers, hormones, chopping off their breasts, getting rid of the titties, the titas, poof, gone. Kind of extreme. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. When you talk about bills in Florida, Jen Psaki's called them like disgusting and so on, and they keep saying these bills are radical. So anyway, Pete was on The View, and he was asked a question about the bills, and asked, "Do you think that bills like these will kill kids?"
In my state of Florida, with the so-called "Don't Say Gay" law now, which he says will kill kids. Do you agree? And as a politician, because this strikes you as, your husband is a teacher.
Yeah.
You are obviously LGBTQ yourself, and you are now a parent.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about this?
He's right. And I think every law ought to be judged for the effect it's going to have on real people in real life. And I get the political reasons why they're doing this. By the way, some of those political reasons is they don't have a plan on anything else, right? I mean, they don't have a plan on dealing with inflation or dealing with gas prices or dealing with the issue.
Yeah, I changed the subject there, sir. No, I think they have a plan about how to teach kids, like how they've been teaching kids for a very long time. I mean, I certainly didn't have gender ideology up when I was in elementary, nor did we even know much about our teachers, just like lives in general. There's some people who've been like, "Oh, well, I had one teacher who was, invited kids over." I'm like, I had a teacher who invited kids over to her house and stuff. She went to prison for statutory rape, actually. So like there's a professional line that students should have with their teachers, because they are an authority figure, and they are the adult in the room, while the parents are not there, and parents trust these individuals to watch over their kids for a certain amount of hours, and perhaps that trust is unwarranted now. I don't know. I know there's plenty of teachers out there who have sense, but there's just a really loud, progressive, scary segment of teachers right now. So him saying that these bills are going to kill people, that's nutty. How are they going to kill people not being able to teach gender identity to a kindergartner? And he said kids. So if you can't teach that to a 7-year-old, the 7-year-old's gonna go and off themselves? Because there are stories actually in Florida. There is and I played this before, but there was a man, and his daughter was subject to these teachers who started putting this gender identity stuff. Now this kid was 12, 13 or so older than well, I guess the bill would still apply, because you have to alert parents to things that are relevant to their mental health. So this would still apply. But they were changing the pronouns and all this kind of stuff, and doing the gender affirming care, and they were keeping it from the father, and he did not find out until he found his child about to kill herself, like hanging herself. That's like intense. Hanging yourself? Oh my gosh. And he was like sobbing, telling the story, and that was in the news in Florida, and they may even mention in the segment, like, this is one of the reasons why this is like moving along. This bill is moving along. And then there's other stories as well in Florida, and in other parts of the country as well, especially like the couple stories out of California. Well, I'm sure you guys aren't surprised. So enforcing this sort of ideology on kids, confusing them, and then purposely drawing a wedge between parents and the child, yeah, that's actually like killing kids. That's what's actually killing kids here, Pete. Gender dysphoria, and I've said this before, people are treating it like it's some kind of game, and they're making it some kind of trend with the trans ideology, gender ideology. Gender dysphoria is a condition, and it is a real mental illness, and people are upset with that distinction. But it is, and I would never wish that on anyone. And as a parent, I don't want you to act like it's the treat your child or anything like a pariah. But if you have a child with gender dysphoria, that is something to be alarmed about and treat with caution. It's I saw this one video on TikTok last year. There was a group of girls. Maybe they all identified as boys, but they were dressed, I don't know, butchy, and their hair was short and like dark and colorful at the same time, different dyes and stuff. And so they were in a park. There was like a little crowd around. And I think basically mostly their like little clique was paying attention to each other. And so one of the girls grabbed a mic and announced that she was a boy, and all of her friends started jumping up and down, screaming in excitement. And I'm like, why are all these girls excited that they're all boys or feel that they're all boys? Abigail Schreier wrote in Irreversible Damage about how she believed a lot of the ideology today is due to a social contagion. And I think it's pretty evident that we see that today in this day and age. But this is not something that you would want to confuse your child about for the rest of their life. And there's people who have gone through the process of doing gender affirming care, as the White House would call it, actually chopping off their breasts and doing all these kind of things and finding out that they made a massive mistake, and then they detransition. But once you take that testosterone and starts messing up your voice, unless you got the grace of God on your side, you're not like getting that back. And chopping off your boobs and all that other stuff, man. But that's what the White House is putting out there. There's this poll or this survey. I mean, we know that the suicide rates are pretty high, but more than half of transgender males who participated in the survey reported attempted suicide in their lifetime, while 29.9% of transgender female teens said they attempted suicide. Among non-binary youth, 41.8% of respondents stated that they had attempted suicide at some point in their lives. I think that was human. Give me 1 second. I'll make sure I got that. Was from hrc.org. So that's high. That is not normal. So I don't understand why people say that those numbers are because people aren't treated well or with respect or bullied and so on. But there's such a sensitivity. Like if you say define a woman or something like that, people be like, or this bill in Florida, they'll say, well, you're saying that trans don't exist. Like, because I define a woman as an adult human female, you're saying you don't exist? That's a hysterical, unhealthy opinion. And it's common language. It is the common response. It is deeply unhealthy. But this is what they want to keep pushing. I want to show you guys a video. This is a teacher at a charter school. Libs of TikTok exposed this. The charter school ended up blocking them. This is a teacher who teaches first grade and decided to come out to his students and explain to him his gender identity.
Something cool about me, Miss Hammond? All right. All right. So something that's really cool and unique about who I am is that I am transgender. So we touched a little bit about that at the beginning of this week in the book that Miss Hammond read, but I'm going to give you my explanation about what it means to be transgender as well. So when babies are born, the doctor looks at them and they make a guess about whether the baby is a boy or a girl based on what they look like.
It's not a guess. They're pretty darn accurate. They're pretty darn accurate. Spot on.
And most of the time, that guess is 100% correct. There are no issues whatsoever. But sometimes the doctor is wrong. The doctor makes an incorrect guess. When the doctor makes a correct guess, that's when a person is called cisgender. When a doctor's guess is
First of all, I had a friend of mine, this is Savvy, like has done a few videos about how women hate this term cisgender, that it is a slur, and people are like, no, it's not. Like, yes, it is. And the person who like coined that term, by the way, pedophile. So or pro pedophilia, I guess you could say, rather, and just thought of it more like I don't know, one of these sort of maps people like it's a condition rather than look at a criminal or whatever. So yeah, not too fond of the word. We're just women. You don't have to make up some kind of subcategory of it. Like we're natural and legit. You don't have to say cis, which if anyone of you are confused of what the heck cisgender means, cisgender is that you identify as the gender that you are were born into as far as like your sex. So we don't like that. And she did some very viral videos. I posted one on my Facebook. Maybe I'll post some more of how you, even though you guys, they may think that that's a fine term to use, like we're not into it. And she compared it to Hispanics who are like, please stop using Latina X or Latin X and stuff. Like, no, that's not, it's never going to happen. Like, just let it go. So just wanted to butt in right there.
wrong, that's when they are transgender. So I'm a man, but when I was a baby, the doctors told my parents I was a girl. And so my parents gave me a name that girls typically have and bought me clothes that girls typically wear. And until I was 18 years old, everyone thought I was a girl. And this.
So another thing, his class is first graders, and he's introducing this idea to these kids that it's possible that maybe some of them aren't a boy, aren't a girl. And majority of people who end up having any sort of questions like this grow out of it. Any sort of question about their identity. There's so many Tom girls who are just like so excited or so grateful that they grew up in a time of today. Because people really been trying to push ideas on these kids in the past that they were trans. And there's people who are like, you can tell at the age of 2. I'm going to play a clip. I believe this is on the clip of this Dr. Oz video where they mention that you can tell as young as like 2 years old if the signs that someone may be trans. So that doesn't make any sense to me because so many things that people are wrapping their gender identity on is based in stereotypes, and not all women are the same. You can say, well, I want to wear dresses. I know women who never want to wear dresses ever, who find them uncomfortable. And you can like pay them to get into one. But they're still feminine and they are still very much women. There's people who don't like makeup. I'm not too fond of it, myself, like putting it on, like taking it off. People are like, oh, you have good skin. I'm like, thank God, because I don't treat it well. Like I'll go to sleep with it on my face. Like that's a whole hassle. It just kind of, is what it is, So just because you may like things that you consider feminine, and you can scale, I guess, what your femininity versus masculinity, that can be a thing, but that doesn't make you a boy or a girl. So if so much of your identity is wrapped into stereotypes and that's how you define what a woman and a man is, that just also flies in the face of people who've been trying to defeat gender stereotypes. So at the same time, you have people like, well, I feel like I'm a girl because I like Barbies. There's people trying to take away the Barbie section at Target and stuff because, or gendering it male and female because they want to tear down those stereotypes and whatnot. So it's just not a very cohesive sort of world we're living in here.
This was super, super uncomfortable for me because I knew that wasn't right. The way I like to describe it is like wearing a super itchy sweater. The longer you wear it, the itchier it gets, and the only way to make the itching stop is to have everyone see and know the person that you really are. So when I was 18, I told my family and my friends that I'm really a boy, and it was like this huge weight had been lifted off of my shoulders, and I had the freedom to be who I truly am. And even though this experience is super challenging sometimes, it made me the person I am, and I'm super proud to be transgender.
So there you have it. Now, people are like, I don't know, they oppose the Florida bill because they want to be their authentic selves, and they say stuff like, oh, I want to be able to share that I have a partner and whatnot. When it comes to like a case like this, really was not stuff that you had to share with your first graders at all in the least bit. And considering, well, the voice obviously would be suspect to I think most adults and stuff, and maybe a kid may ask a question or two. I think they pass enough, especially since they apparently transitioned when they're 18, that kids probably wouldn't question so much. And if she wants to live her life as a man, then I don't know. I think a lot of those kids maybe wouldn't be able to tell. They'd be none the wiser. So to me, it's a lot of this is about people getting affirmation from children. Like you could go talk to this stuff about with your coworkers, which all of them aren't going to be cool with that anyway. So you better get over that. You just gotta grow up. If you choose a hard path in life, that's just what you choose, man. But you have to learn to be okay with that yourself. But trying to get children to affirm your worldview and make you feel good about life, that's just not the way. Nor is it healthy. Nor is it healthy. So this was a charter school. A lot of people were like, put your kids in charter schools and private schools. You just gotta watch where your kids are. You just gotta watch where your kids are. And again, libs of TikTok posted that. The school ended up blocking them. But we should not pass along the gender. I don't think gender identity should be taught in school at all. At all. It is again, people are treating it like it's some kind of trend. And it is a condition that people have, but there is an element of a social contagion today where a lot of people are jumping on it. They're self-diagnosing. They may have other conditions, other issues, depression, internalized misogyny. I've heard a lot of different things from detransitioners, and people don't, there's not enough people questioning them, and they go along with it, and some have done irreversible damage to themselves. So I don't appreciate them teaching this stuff to kids, especially since, I mean, if you're a boy or a girl, that's biology. As our Supreme Court newest justice reluctantly sort of let us know when she's like, I'm not a biologist. Well, I know you don't want to trigger people, but you just let people know that biology plays a huge role and determines what that is. So this is disturbing, and this is disturbing that the White House is doubling down on this so much, especially knowing, you got to know that it's unpopular, like as a whole in the country, if everyone was just kind of seeing what they were doing here. And we got to keep letting people know. That's one reason why I talk about it. And it brings me no pleasure to talk about this like all the time, guys. But please share with your neighbors that this is what's the priority of the White House. Let them know, because I'm pretty sure that's not what they asked for when they swiped Biden. Pretty sure it's not. Pretty sure their daughter's getting beaten by biological males in sports, whether it's running or weightlifting or swimming, wasn't what they had in mind. I'm pretty sure sharing locker rooms with boys or overnight trips with men who believe that they're women isn't what they asked for. Pretty sure that's not why they voted Biden. Should have been paying attention. There were some signs. Granted, I don't know how you can know it was quite this bad, but once we started seeing some of the people they were picking, oh, like Levin, huge red flags. Huge red flags. Last thing I want to talk about is Trump endorsed Dr. Oz, and a lot of people are raising their eyebrows at it, scratching their heads. People in Pennsylvania, conservatives on Twitter, people are asking, does he know people in Pennsylvania? Like, this is really strange. So Jack Posobiec has been like, he lives in Pennsylvania, so he's been like nonstop with tweeting of stuff about Dr. Oz. And even when Trump tweeted his endorsement the other day, he was like, this does not change how I feel in the least bit. So Trump, he touted his like, he's like, he's a TV star, I believe. He tweeted out his credential. Well, he didn't tweet it out. He can't tweet, but like in the statement, he talked about his education, his work as a doctor. And he said he was a conservative. He said he was pro-gun. He said he was anti-abortion, and he said that he could help defeat the radical left, and he believed he was his best shot. I don't know quite enough right now about the dynamics on the ground in Pennsylvania to know that is the case, but he's trailing behind David McCormick, who is the front runner right now, but it's a tight race. And in my view, the radical left is so left right now and so radical that if they're on the ballot, there is like a radical lefty. I don't know. I think Democrats are just going to get shellacked everywhere, unless it's like in a state where maybe it's impossible for them to get shellacked, because of stuff like the Biden administration's pushing and the cheerleading. I think a lot of people are going to have to try to back away from Biden, but I don't think it's going to be enough. So frankly, Trump just believing that Oz has the best shot, perhaps because he's the most famous, is not good enough for me. And Oz also does not even live in the state. So here's a couple of things that should alarm you, I think. So since we were just talking about transgenderism, let's play this video from back in the day.
Make a decision to let your child live as the other sex, even alter their body. It's an area of intense debate. Today you'll meet families coping with this astonishing reality. What does it mean to be a boy? What does it mean to be a girl? Those two simple questions are infinitely complex and gut-wrenching for parents of children who are born transgender.
I'm a girl, and I have a penis.
8-year-old Josie was born Joseph. Physically, she's a boy. But from the time she could talk, Josie knew she was a girl. Her sex on the outside didn't match how she felt on the inside. And that's how every transgender child feels. Children like Josie may start showing signs of transgender as early as 2 or 3. This extraordinary condition is not as rare as you might think. It's estimated that 3 million Americans believe they were born the wrong sex. Transgender shakes up all of our ideas about what makes us male or female. Does gender come from our anatomy or from our thoughts and feelings? While science looks for answers, what are parents of transgender children to do?
Yeah, so that comment about you can know as far as 2 and 3 years old, based on what? Because a child's not going to be able to articulate the what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a girl. Like if you ask someone like, what they say, I feel like a boy. What do you mean by that? Can you explain that? Probably not. What do you think it means to be a girl? Now, people may, even adults, like, are stumped by that question. Matt Walsh was on a Dr. Phil show, and man, he made those activists look like chumps because they can answer very simple questions. Like, what is a woman? Very simple question. How do you? And they're like, whatever, whoever identifies as that. Okay, that is Rachel Dolezal black? Like, is my nephew Spider-Man? Like, come on. And people want to push this ideology on kids, which is but they can't articulate in a way that doesn't sound like make believe. Come on. So, if they say, well, I like pink, I like Barbies and whatever, etc., stuff like that. Again, that's just based off stereotypes. So if someone's still like, I want to be a girl, I want to be a boy, or I believe I'm that, at 2 and 3, that's just not sufficient to be like, you know what, my child could be trans. It's just not, especially when most people end up growing out of it if left unchecked, I guess, unleft without having this influence on the kids, and they may just grow up and get over it, or some of these people realize that they're gay. But so that's a video back in the day with Oz on a show. So and I think maybe that was scrubbed from his site and stuff, but Ozbek has receipts, y'all. Here's something from 2019 talking about the heartbeat bill.
The medical school in Philadelphia, and I saw women who'd had coat hanger events. I mean, they're really traumatic events that happened when they were younger, before Roe versus Wade, and many of them were harmed for life, emotionally discarding anyway.
Right.
And listen, I'm at a personal level, I wouldn't want anyone in my family to have an abortion. I told my kids this. I mean, I love the lives that they're creating so much that I personally wouldn't want it, but I don't want to interfere with everyone else's stuff because it's hard enough to get into life as it is. What I do know as a physician is if you're going to make it if the litmus test is the heart's beating, then really make it the heart beating. Mm-hmm. Don't make some surrogate version of it when cells are having electrical path. That's not what the average person thinks. Right. The average person is envisioning a little acorn heart beating in there. That's not what's going on. What it is. That's 6 weeks. And I think the rule that most Americans seem to support is if the child was viable outside the womb, then you don't want to kill that child. Mm-hmm. If the child was not going to be able to survive.
So that's him trashing the heartbeat bill. First of all, that's not a very pro-life position that you consider him pro-choice. There's a lot of pro-choice people who say, I would never want one for my, obviously he can't have one, he's a man, but for his wife or his family, but he doesn't want to dictate what other people can do. It's not about, I know there's people who claim to have sort of this libertarian sort of worldview about it. And they're like, well, I just don't want the government involved. Like, the government does have a legitimate role in our lives when it comes to protecting like our liberties and our rights and our freedoms. So like if you were murdered or something, like you would like hope that the person was caught and they go through trial and they have, of course, due process. So they have to have like you assume they're innocent, and then they're charged and then you get to take away their rights, right? And they go to prison and stuff. So we do respect the right to life and do hope that authorities get to the bottom of such things. So why don't you think the government has an invested interest in protecting the right to life of the unborn? So the question is, like, do you believe that the unborn have rights? So he's a doctor. He knows that life begins at conception. And if he's talking about when babies are viable, I have you guys like seen a baby on an ultrasound? Like the only time I've seen it was my nephew, who was very small right now, Noah, born not too long ago, but I got to see him at 14 weeks on the ultrasound, and man, they're lively. I saw an MRI of a baby at 16 weeks, and you can see the brain in the head, and they look so much like a baby. Now they're teeny tiny, so very tiny. And the picture, the video that I saw was just really blown up. But they're a human being. They're just very small. And know that at 16 weeks you can't live outside the womb. But if you showed most people that MRI of that baby at 16 weeks that I saw, I think most people will be like, "Oh yeah, that's a baby." And again, I've said this before. I don't really think viability makes any sense if your argument is a woman's bodily autonomy, which bodily autonomy actually just means you making decisions about your life and your future. So I don't think abortion actually has anything to do with bodily autonomy, to be frank. But if your view is it's the woman's body, therefore it's her choice, well, then what does viability matter? Because it's still in her body at week 21, 20, which most people think about week 24, but babies can survive earlier than 24. So to me, I don't think viability makes sense anyway. So at 6 weeks, the heart has formed, and maybe it's not like the image that people imagine, but it is in its rudimentary sort of form, and it's just a stage of development. By week 10, most of the baby's major organs have formed, including its brain. I mean, it's still developing, but from the moment it is conceived, it's rapidly developing. So he's a doctor. He's aware of that. So bashing the 6-week heartbeat bill and then saying that most people, so is that his line, viability, where he's willing to draw the line there? Because that's pretty far to me still too. I mean, you're talking about 2-day procedures that are harsh, man. I had a friend who had a 2-day procedure, and I talk about her a lot, but her abortion was horrific. Come on. So that was from 2019 with Dr. Oz there. Again, if that is his position, that's actually not a pro-life position. Because if you are a pro-life person, and I understand that some people have caveats and stuff, but the idea is that the unborn, we call ourselves pro-life because we believe that the unborn has a right to life. So why what he believes the right to life just kicks in when it's viable? Again, it doesn't make sense because it's still inside the woman's body. So what does it matter? Like they just waited too long? Well, most women have abortions out of convenience. I know people hate when you say that, because it makes them sound so callous and stuff, I guess, but it doesn't mean that it's not a hard decision. However, it just means that it wasn't necessary. Like there's women who have abortions because their relationships didn't work out, because they have a new job, because of different career path, or they're still in college and whatnot. So you can move heaven and earth and to try to at least keep your baby for the 9 months and find it a home or something like that. And there are more people willing to adopt newborns than newborns available. So no baby is unwanted. You just don't want your baby, or maybe you even do, but you just believe the lie that this is the best thing for them and for you, and so you go ahead and you make that decision. But a lot of those reasons why women may have an abortion at 6 weeks or 12 weeks can be true at 21 or 24. Colorado, made it so you can have abortions up to 9 months. New York, I believe it's 9 months, and they set the towers up, or like Empire State Building or something was pink. And in DC, of course, there's like no restrictions of what you can do there. And there was a horrific story we talked about last week a lot, where they found whole babies aborted, and perhaps some of them were illegally aborted, but they won't do an autopsy. So I don't think that position is good enough, and I actually wouldn't qualify him as pro-life. And there's also other videos of him, like on his show, talking about like red flag laws and so on. So people are like, this guy's not a conservative. Now, will he be better than maybe some radical left person? Sure, I guess. But if Trump's going to tout someone as a conservative, there's other people who'd be better. Now you could be saying, well, Trump changed on a lot of these different issues and stuff as well. That's true over time and years and stuff. But Trump, especially like while he was in the campaign season, understood, I think, a lot of common sense sort of values that we could agree on, and really wanted to adhere with the base and make sort of deals and policy decisions based on the base, I guess you could say, and I think ended up coming more along to the right. And I just don't know or foresee why that would be the case with Oz, because he was pressed on Fox News about an abortion question and it didn't pass the vibe check. So um there's plenty of people in Pennsylvania that are like, I love Trump, but I don't know about this. I don't know about this, bruh. So yeah, I he would not be my first choice. So people of Pennsylvania, you got a decision to make. And I assume you'll make the right one. But if Trump did it based on they want to push someone who they think can ultimately win, again, I think the left is so radical right now that just go make the case. Just go make the case. And you know, sometimes there's so many people, you may have a good candidate who can get there to the finish line if people would just sort of back them and make them the candidate that's viable for a win. But sometimes they have someone who's not meeting all the sort of checking off all the boxes that need to as far as the ideology, but they think, oh, in a position maybe they have fame or money or something like that, and they're willing to push that person over the finish line and trip over the other guy, or trip the other guy, because they feel like maybe that's the most successful path to victory. It's like, well, why can't we help the person who's has the morals and the qualities that we're sort of looking for? And I understand there's some people out there who just aren't going to be viable, and sometimes you have to make compromises. But this is an election coming up where a lot of Democrats are just going to get whacked, just absolutely whacked. So I think he made the wrong call. I love him to pieces, though. I love him to pieces. I love him to pieces. I do. But mm-mm. Oz don't pass the vibe check. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you for joining me. I went a little long, but that's okay. Please make sure you guys check out different merchandise on the website on blacktnews.com, like the cool goat hoodie. I do have those in different colors, and I do have them in t-shirts also in different colors. So go to blacktnews.com, check out the stuff on the website. Also got the I voted for President Trump blog. I was historic peace deals, border security, ISIS destroy, gas under $2, no new wars, tax cut, and this lousy t-shirt. I'm not the victim you're looking for, and all kinds of other goodies like the Be Better Not Bitter shirt. So you guys can check that out. I do want to give a shout out to Brighton, Michigan Pack. If I said something today that triggered you, I don't care. They don't care. It doesn't work like that. But I do appreciate how they always want to lift up conservative voices, especially in Michigan, where we're going to have a couple of fights for, well, the good of the country, man. We cannot allow Whitmer to win again. So I do really thank Brian Michigan Pack. Again, please check out different merchandise that I have, like different books that I have. I mentioned Super Kid earlier in the show. That's a book that's actually based on some stories about my dad. He's the inspiration behind it. It's a middle grade chapter book that your kids will really, really enjoy. And some of you have purchased Super Kid 2 for your little ones and have given good feedback and good reviews. So I do appreciate that. But they teach you good. There's a lot of wholesome sort of conservative values in these books. It's not a political book, but it's just got good concepts, you know, fighting for right's sake, for what's right for right's sake. What do you do when you have to face an impossible battle? Why it's wrong to lie. The power of your imagination. All kinds of good stuff. So check out Super Kid. I also do write for young adult, new adult. I do have a historical fiction fantasy book series called The Color of God's Eyes and Song of the Devil Lips. So if imagine like, you know, Civil War, like Harriet Tubman, underground railroad kind of stuff, it meets X-Men superpowers. So, so got some really cool stuff. And I also do have a nonfiction faith book, called Slay Your Fear, which I wrote because of the pandemic. And I wish to God people had listened, but they didn't. But here we are, still, more than 2 years later, and now people are like, oh, you can get back to normal life. But we could have did that before. They was playing games with us, guys. It was really playing games. Anyway, God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.